morning, everyone. We can get the session started. There are a few participants in Zoom as well. So for the Zoom participants, we will be discussing the issue here. You can write down your answers and put them in the chat once the session is over. So we can start with the first issue session. So it's biometrics versus anthropometrics. The aim of this session is to discuss the relative metrics or referring to the measurements of human characteristics for the purpose of age estimation as biometrics or anthropometrics. So there will be 8 questions where each of you in the Zoom as well you can discuss and you can write down what you feel and we will accumulate once everything at the end of the session. So if you wanted to refer to some notes, we have some here and it should be there in the ring center as well for the Zoom participants. Yeah. I'll just pass this around if you feel like you need more time to discuss. So can we move to the first question? For the Zoom participants, you can unmute yourself and give us the answer for discussing. Or at the end of the session, you can just accumulate all your answers and we can collate it. Okay, the first question is: the distinction between biometrics and anthropometrics crucial in understanding age assurance technology, or are there interchangeable terms? You can feel free to discuss. You can come up with your answers and you can start with the discussion. Anyone would like to start?
Yeah, so maybe I can chip in some comment there. So honor from privately, we also we do insurance solutions there. So one of the things that we come across the most in the context of privacy of data is this whole special category data processing, right? If the data that is being processed, if it's possible to do an identification of people, then it becomes a very sticky issue. And we spend quite a lot of time in events like this or in client discussions how age assurance solutions are different from identification. One specific instance is facial age estimation versus face recognition, where in face recognition you really need to find personal identifiers to do your work, whereas age estimation doesn't really require that, right? So from my perspective, the distinction between biometrics and anthropometrics, that discussion actually goes towards that direction as well. It might be reasonable to make such a distinction, even on a regulatory level, to make sure that age assurance work is perceived as a privacy preserving way for businesses to operate. Yeah, so that's my initial impression.
Thanks, Onur. Anyone else would like to pitch in?
Yeah, so in relation to that question specifically, I definitely do think we need to look at the difference between the two. I do think there is a difference. So if we talk about biometrics specifically, biometrics focuses on unique, measurable biological traits for identification, whereas when we look at anthropometrics, that involves physical body measurements. So So to me, there definitely is a distinction, and we do need to kind of look at the definition and the differences between the two to figure out, I suppose, which one we want to use.
Great. Anyone else? Any of the Zoom participants? Perfect. If you come up with an answer, you can just put it in the chat. We can go over it again. Moving on to the next question. How do the ethical implications differ between the use of biometrics and anthropometrics in age estimation? Feel free to do your research, or if you want to each one of these, please let me know. Could you repeat the question, please? How do the ethical implications differ between the use of biometrics and anthropometrics in age estimation? Yeah, I can pass this around.
There is no any answer to this this question. I would like just to share some thoughts with you. I come from the Spanish Data Protection Agency, and we are deeply involved regarding topics about biometrics. And when you were talking about that, I think it's so interesting. Your name is Sophie. When Sophie, I think that it was so interesting what you say. I have one concern that I would like to share, and it is some tendency to try to make an assessment of an operation of the whole processing activity. Usually when I have a processing activity, I have several operations. For example, in the case of biometrics, usually it means the collection of some physical characteristics, and later we have the processing of such physical characteristics, usually to obtain a kind of template. And later I use such templates regarding and connect or link it with other personal data. And sometimes the process, such whole processing activity that is oriented, for example, to attendance control, pushing in or pushing out in some companies, that this is the final goal of the processing. When I'm talking about biometrics, I'm talking only about one operations. And perhaps I can say, no, in that operation, I deal with personal data or not personal data. In this operation, I'm dealing with special sensitive data or not special sensitive data. My opinion, and I want to share with you, is that we cannot focus only one process in the whole processing. The processing operation is defined by the final purpose. That final purpose is what defines a processing operation that has to be the legitimate legal base that have to be to take into account, and then they have such parallel implications, like I'm collecting some personal data, I have to make such process and so on. And sometimes I wonder that we focus in the one of the operations when we are talking about biometrics, and we don't link with the previous and post operations that I have to implement to fulfill the final purpose of the processing operations. Then regarding such anthropometrics, perhaps we can discuss if you think that the process of the anthropometric data in some of the stages of phases of the processing activity could be, in that case, sensitive or not. but it could be even, you can discuss if in that stage of phase in the whole processing is personal data. Even we can discuss that. But the point is that we have to pay attention from the beginning to the end of the processing, because it's what it is at least regulated from our point of view. And and we have to take into account not only the fact that usually all the processing starts with the collection of personal data, that we can say that during the processing of that collection, it is implicit an identification or authentication. I don't want to discuss that, but I want to discuss the collateral effects or the secondary effects that usually have that collection of data, because it's something that I have to take into account when I'm assessing the whole operation process. Perhaps I have templates that are oriented during 4 seconds to get biometric templates. But I have to think about the threats that are over the whole processing operation. What happened in cases of data breaches? What happened in cases of data breaches? We know that the data breaches is something that happens continuously. I don't mind the kind of security measures that you are implementing. Then I think that when I'm thinking about the whole processing, I have to think what happened when the warranties are over. Not warranties, sorry. The security measures are broken. Then what happened with such kind of information? And what are the consequences for such kind of information? And I want to give an opinion that when we are talking about, for example, biometrics, we say biometrics, identification or authentication to put biometrics in the box of the special category of data. And I want to pay attention that a special category of data is processing of personal data revealing, for example, racial or ethnic origin, political opinions, religious or philosophical beliefs, trade union memberships, or data concerning health. Then biometrics could extend beyond just operations of identification or authentications. That's one of the characteristics of biometrics that could be useful. But when I'm collecting such kind of information, I have to take into account that depending on the technology and the implementation that you are using, perhaps I can go beyond such identification and authentication, that I could have a kind of processing operation that reveal such additional information. It doesn't mean that all biometrics reveal. It doesn't mean that all biometrics could be linked with health data, but I need to make an assessment depending on the technology that you are using. If I am crossing such border, that make me into consider such kind of biometrics. I'm sorry, I'm talking too much.
I mean, no worries at all. I mean, we are here to discuss everything in detail, right? And one thing that stands out in what you're saying to us, in my perspective, the distinction between biometrics and anthropometrics would only be relevant if it's tied to the purpose of the processing, right? If we cannot tie these definitions to the purpose of the processing, then this discussion is over, because the initial source of the data is the same. In the case of, for instance, facial age estimation or face recognition, right? The input is the same. It's my face, and if someone gets a hold on my facial data, then we can reason that they could be using it for purposes outside the desired outcomes and the secondary effects and the collaterals that you're mentioning. In the context of when you say the biometric template, extraction of biometric templates, right? That is where I see that we will start to have some distinctions. I will give you one example. Our noses and ears, they grow, whereas the rest of our facial structure may remain the same, right? So a system with the specific purpose of age estimation would focus on those visual cues as salient features in generating a biometric template, which would be something completely different from a system whose purpose is to identify you, which is supposed to discard this information while extracting the biometric template. So in the unfortunate possibility of a data breach, and if these biometric templates are stolen by malicious parties, I would say clearly one of them lends to a higher collateral damage than the other one. That's and that drives the ethics around ethics that we should implement in each of these cases. I'll let other people comment. But
I can pass the list of questions if you can feel free to give the inputs. Yeah, this is the list of questions which we will be discussing. So whichever you feel relevant, you can pitch in. It's there in the Ring Central app as well, like Ring Central. I can just go to this session on the Ring Central and you will find the list of questions for the Zoom participants. Yeah, moving on to the third question. Should the standards differentiate between these two, and why not? The third question.
Yeah, I do think that the standard should differentiate between the two, because basically the use cases are different. In the case of just trying to do something like age estimation, there's no real requirement that you continue to store the data of like a facial scan or anything like that after you use it for the purposes of doing the age estimation. And in fact, it's usually discouraged keeping any of that data because of privacy concerns, et cetera. Whereas when you need to do something like log into whatever, there has to be a way to match you as a individual human being to whatever the data is that represents you on the back end, and allow you and only you into the login procedure of the computer or the system or whatever it is. So in that case, using biometrics, I believe, is the correct term to use. But if you're doing something only to, say, provide a gateway in an anonymous way to go to an age-restricted site, then something different than biometrics should be used, such as the Anthropometrics, or something else that maybe is more applicable.
Thank you for the input. Anyone else?
Yeah, I do agree. I think we definitely need to distinguish between the two within the standard. I think people might have a preference for one or the other, but I think dependent on the use case, we might want to use biometrics or we might want to use the other techniques. So yeah, I think we definitely need to distinguish between the two anyway.
I think that what you said before was so clarifying for me. Thank you very much. And I think that is so interesting what you said too. But I think that when we are talking about biometrics, and we are talking that first we have to pick up the image of somebody, we have personal data. I don't mind if they are collecting for 1 second or 1 millisecond. I have there a processing. And then the fact that the anthropometric, like in the beginning, looks more preserving for the privacy, less risks, and so on, because it is not deal with the template that allow identification, but you are focused on anthropometric. It is a very good approach to say I will implement processing activities with less risk, because I'm not such intrusive like using with biometrics. But everything depends a lot of how is the actual implementation of the whole processing. Because, for example, I can have, for example, an anthropometric analysis that I do in my own device without connections with third parties or third servers. Then my face doesn't leave my own cell phone. And finally, just an anthropometric template is generated in my cell phone and is transmitted away. It's nothing to do that I have to transmit the picture of my face to a third party that they will forward to another place, that they make something that I don't have any kind of control. Then it's what I mean. We cannot only take into account if we are using biometrics or anthropometrics, but all the steps before and after we have to take into account to set up. There is really an anonymous processing or not, and it will depend. Anthropometrics is an additional safeguard to allow a less intrusive processing, for sure, for sure. But it could be implemented in a way that it could be useless. If what I need is to pass through a process that imply for, in theory, only microseconds, a lot of processing of my personal data.
And let's not forget the fact that in both cases we are using the same initial input also makes them subject to a common set of standards regardless, such as the performance of these systems with respect to varying skin tones, gender, or any other cues that might result in inadvertent, hopefully inadvertent at least, biases. So in that case, on question 3, I would say there might be some differences in terms of standards, but there is still a very large set of intersection. It would be such an unfortunate case if a business makes a decision based on an inaccurate age estimation that might harm the data subject in the first place. And yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you everyone. So we have like 5 more questions and 20 minutes to cover. So if any questions require any in-depth discussion, we can keep it at the last. So we'll cover the first. The 4th question: what are the implications of privacy and data security when employing biometrics versus anthropometrics age assurance techniques? Implications for privacy and data security.
I kind of like our discussion because it's semi-structured and it seems like we're already kind of covering some of the stuff, right? My personal opinion, bottom line, is the raw data security and privacy of it is the same regardless of when we talk biometrics or anthropometrics, where where it would still still remain the same, data security and privacy. We have to link back to the Spanish regulators' comment again. If the purpose implies a significant impact, then they must be providing a similar security and guarantees. Linking back to, sorry, what was your name? Mark. Mark's comment. If a business is building a database of these templates, that's an additional hazard, and it might violate data minimization in certain senses, because we don't want to discover what people might be doing today with those templates, even if we don't know if it's possible to do those things at all. So in all cases, I think in the context of age estimation, the templates should be removed as soon as the purpose of authentication is achieved. Authentication, as in if this person is old enough to access to a site, or if this person is old enough to see a certain content in that website.
I'm so glad to be here with you, because you say very, very interesting things. I want to say that to use is just I'm thinking loud. Sorry, just it's not my final opinion. It's just with the aim to discuss. Anthropometrics by itself, I think that it is dependent how it's implemented, anthropometric. Because, for example, it's not the same if I have anthropometric and I say that I am my shoe size is 43. This is anthropometric. But it is here there is such amount of people that has 43 shoes that it doesn't give enough information to singularize an individual. When I have a lot of anthropometric information, depending on the depth of anthropometric information, then I have to make a unique identifier of a person. Then I can have many kind of strategies. Not only the fact that I use only anthropometrics, but the way that I collect such data and to make an assessment that it couldn't be a unique identifier, but because there are techniques to do so. That this is enough to have an assessment of the age, but I don't have enough information, or because I introduce noise, the granularity of the information is not enough, and so on. And I can make that such piece of data anthropometric could be directly anonymous. Regarding the storing on databases, I think that why we have to need to store in a database anything. That's the point. When I'm talking about anthropometric, and when I want to have a result based on of age estimations, what I need is, what can I do? I cannot do A, or I cannot do B, because it is, for example, over 18 years old or lower years old. I don't need to transmit anthropometrics. Why? This is not the reason. That this is the right of the principle of minimization. I don't need that you store even for 1 millisecond such information in a database, because store means transmissions, and then I have transmission, storing, and an act of faith that everything will work properly. I don't need such to do such act of faith. That's the reason, because I think this is super interesting, this discussion about anthropometrics. For me, it's a new idea, but I think that there are qualities that are not belong to anthropometrics by itself, but depends on the way that I'm doing anthropometric.
I think this will be my last comment, because it's like I've been talking. So two things here. Look, I didn't know that we could use the term anthropometrics for the type of processing that we aim to do before coming to this event. Honestly, I really don't care about how we put the name, because it's a one name, one word. It's maybe at some point it will be easy to remember, but we need to look at the depth of the discussion to decide on that. And let's go the most pessimistic way, because that's what we need to guarantee, right? Suppose that I have got a malicious actor tapping into my entire tech stack, okay, such that even if my technology doesn't send any template to a server, even through the local processing, they manage to penetrate and extract the Anthropometrics template, right? Because you know, my company, we don't send any data to servers to do our age estimation. But let's suppose, for the sake of argument, well, there are some metrics in differential privacy field, which gives us a sense of privacy budget. Going back to your example, the shoe size 43. If you are the only person that has the shoe size 43 in the list of stolen templates, well then you would be identifiable, even though that wasn't the original intention, right? So we would need some guidance and recommendations. We could also do consultations with the tech providers and the regulators to come up with those standards to define, okay, how can we quantify the privacy budget, an acceptable privacy budget for these templates, whether we call it anthropometric or not, so that we can say that this system reasonably minimizes data, and at the disaster scenarios, there is still a lot of protection by design that would help stop the malicious actors on their tracks. That was all of me. So I'll shut up.
Thank you. Just to comment, from the regulatory, our control authority point of view, I'm not so scared about the hackers or an attack. I'm so scared later on of the development of a lateral regulation that forced to store for a minimum time, to give open the data to, for example, the Court of Justice. Because one key point to define if one data could be anonymous is if there is an order of the Court of Justice to get access to that database and to get access to parallel databases and even storage in your cell phone, they can link that information with you and you are identified. If it is yes, it means that this is personal data and you can be identified through that personal data, because there is a possibility that in one moment a state agent collect information from here and there and then link the information all together. This is one of my main worries. That is something that has happened in some countries regarding, for example, the contact tracing operation, that there is still in the framework of divorce issues that the people is accessing to that database because there is an order of the Court of Justice. And you say something so interesting too, that this is the sample. Perhaps I am the only man in the world that my feed is 55. Then I have, if I'm collecting only the anthropometric of the size of my feed, there is a probability of identification. And I think this is so important to say, what is the probability of identification when I have not only the source of feed, but I am in the context of, for example, basketball players, that it could be a unique identifier? And I have to say, there is some probability of unique identification. How is the risk that I have? Then I have to say, what could be the impact in the context of the processing of that anthropometric, the impact that I could have if I identify and singularize that meant for the size of the feed. And then I have to make the assessment of the risk. Then with some anthropometrics, I could have in the context of operation, I can define the probability of identification. And later I can take into account in the whole processing, taking that perhaps I have a central database, I have a transmission, what could be the impact that has that leaking of the data? And then I can make an assessment of the risk and to say, okay, this is acceptable.
Yeah, so I guess well, my understanding, and again, like coming in, like I really hadn't used or really even heard of the word anthropometrics, other than what this session was. So, but now I'm understanding kind of what the differences could be between the two terminologies. It basically seems like it breaks down to well, so the anthropometrics is kind of a subset of biometrics, and it seems like it falls into the category of what you possibly could do in an anonymous way, meaning if the processing can be done out on the edge cases of technology, such as in your automobile or somewhere that's not directly connected to the internet or something that can transmit data to central processors. So it seems like when you're talking about the security of the two different possible use cases, that kind of by definition, if you're strictly staying in the biometrics cases, then those use cases are going to be for actually verifying an identity of a person. So I've got two examples just in the last week. One, where I went to Amazon, one of the stores, and they've got a new palm reading technology where now I can just, instead of pulling out a credit card or anything like that, I just have the palm scanned. That's biometrics, obviously. Like that's properly called biometrics. Another is when I was boarding my flight from Los Angeles to come here, they had scanned my passport at the check-in counter, and when I went to board the flight, you didn't need anything. You didn't need your cell phone, you didn't need your ticket, you didn't need anything. You walk up and they do a facial scan. So it was boarding via facial recognition, and that also is biometric. Now, where you would use a facial scan or something like that, sort of on the edge, maybe in your car or something, it is possible to use it in a way that you are not recording any sort of data beforehand. Like if I walked into the Amazon store and tried to buy something, but I hadn't previously signed up and taken a picture of my palm, it wouldn't work. Like I'd go like that, and it'd be like, we don't know you. Like we have zero chance of knowing anything about you. And that's kind of where I see the difference between the two terms, and perhaps why there should be a difference between the two terms, because in a way, as we go forward in age estimation, it seems like the word biometrics has sort of hijacked the potential anonymity that can exist in the space. And we need to kind of backtrack, because a lot of people get skittish when it comes to their perceived anonymity being lost. Yeah, I guess that's all I have to say for now.
Thanks everyone. Thanks everyone for the input. I think we might have covered question 5, 7, and 8. So I will just skip this for now, and later we will come back to that. So I am moving on to question number 6. How do cultural and societal perceptions influence the acceptance and the effectiveness of biometrics versus anthropometrics age verification methods? How do cultural and societal perceptions influence the acceptance and effectiveness?
I think that's kind of where I was finishing, kind of at the end of the last, question. Um, I think that there's definitely some differences depending on where in the world you are. Ian Corby, who you'll, I'm sure, meet throughout the rest of the thing, he's based in London, and both of us work for the Age Verification Providers Association. He believes that there's much more acceptance, throughout Europe for things like biometrics or anthropometric scanning, whereas in the United States, he believes that there's a much higher level of allergy to the concepts because people are more afraid of being captured in terms of losing privacy and everything like that. Like a lot of the founding beliefs of the United States tend to revolve around privacy, and it's something that probably does seem to be a bit more of a problem when it comes to accepting certain things. I think that's changing slowly over time, especially when people have their iPhones and like they figure out like I can save 2.5 seconds by not typing in a 6-digit code versus just holding it up and it instantly opens using my face. But they understand that, or they believe that the processing that's being done to enable that to happen stay on the device. It's not going out over the internet to check against a database. It's something that's local. So yeah, it definitely is something that is concerning, but I believe that there are different levels of concern in the world that are current and as we go forward.
Sorry, I said that was my last comment, but I have to talk, right? I do not wish to make any speculations on the people and their cultural tendencies, right? But there is still something actionable here. Like in last July, in the OECD roundtable for age assurance, we had regulators from different parts of the world, including Fiji, including France, UK, Ireland, and the main theme there was to form a unified framework across regulators to have a level playing field for everyone, having a similar understanding, establishing such standards. I don't know if it will materialize such that every regulator in the world will subscribe to the same framework, but what would make it easier is to have the same culture, at least on the regulatory level, on what is what. I mean, that will make the life of regulators easier, because no matter which territory is concerned, it will be the same. So bad actors won't be able to skip. And at the same time, for providers like us, it'll be also quite clear, because we can say whenever we expand to another market, we can say, hey, you know what? We conform to this framework. So Mrs. Client, you don't have to worry, because we already have our technology rubber stamped. That's my comment.
Thank you.
Sorry, yep, completely agree. I think there needs to be regulatory consensus. I think that needs to be a priority within the industry globally. Something that we've noticed when we talk about acceptance of these kind of technologies is we do find that the younger generation are actually more accepting of having to do these kind of processes. I think they are more technologically apt. So we find it's kind of like an older generation as well. They kind of have more questions. So explainability comes into it as well, is making sure that your users understand what you're doing with the data, why you're doing it, how long you're storing it for. So I think that's something that we've noticed with our processes as well, something to kind of keep in mind.
Yeah, sorry, just a time check. We have 2 minutes left, and so what we'll be doing is we can write down the answers and you can take it forward later.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that what you said it's so interesting. I come from Spain. Then my mind is structured like GDPR. That is a big problem. First of all, I think risky to make a difference between biometric and anthropometric. For me, it's, I think that there is a continuous line that goes from biometric to pure anthropometric, and to fix a line that divide both concepts, it could be very, very difficult in many cases. From my point of view, just what I came here to get answers only, but from my point of view, right now, and listening to you, anthropometric is an additional safeguard in the use of biometrics. Is what I'm checking right now. Later, in the application of GDPR in Europe, we are facing one problem. It is the tremendous different cultures that are from Finland to Portugal. It has nothing to do. And sometimes it's, of course, a unique market and so on is something so nice, but many times you are they are colliding very different cultural backgrounds, and it is a problem. Perhaps we should start, instead to try to think about a global solution, to start to take into account regional differences that I think is important to keep. And I can say this last thing. Last thing, from the Spanish Data Protection Agency, we are working in Ukraine now because we have a project in Ukraine regarding data protection. And I want to show you a very fast example. One thing that we have to deal in Ukraine with a problem of an application. It's just an example to show you what is that we have to think when the state of law breaks. The problem that I have in Ukraine was the following. You are in a street of Ukraine, and I come with my friends and my AK-47, and they have that problem. This is a problem that we have to deal with. They came to you, and I say, okay, I don't know you at all, but my friends and me want to know if you are pro-Russian or pro-Ukrainian. And they open an app that you can download from Google Store and put the face here. They go the picture, they make a biometric identification. They cross you in the open things in Meta, Instagram, and so on. They link one name that they found. They look for the leaked databases. And finally, with an algorithm, they said, you are pro-Ukrainian or you're pro-Russian. Then